What I've learned about ADHD is it's an incredible force. I mean, this is the proverbial demons that can get a hold of a person who's striving for success. I had great passion, great enthusiasm, great ideas, but I just time and time again, I felt like something was bumping up against us and against me. And I fought it. I cursed myself relentlessly about, you know, whether it was procrastination or oops, there goes a squirrel, that whole thing. I even Hey, everybody, welcome to the Grow Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Kevin McNulty, and this is your personal development school of growth, where each week my guests and I will bring and break down big ideas and practices that will help you learn, grow, and succeed in life. Thanks for checking us out. Now let the growth begin. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Grow Yourself, your personal development school of growth. And we are here, we exist because our goal is to help people learn, grow, change, and hopefully succeed. And we do that by inviting on interesting guests, skilled experts in their own field. And I can promise you today's episode is no different. Now, I'm going to tell you that I've always believed that success came down to focus, drive, hard work, and in fact, I ran with that belief, that perception for many, many years. But here's the thing, and I'm not playing victim here, but I suffered greatly because I learned later that I had, this ADHD thing that we've heard a lot about. And what I've learned about ADHD is it's an incredible force. I mean, this is the proverbial demons that can get a hold of a person who's striving for success. I had great passion, great enthusiasm, great ideas, but I just time and time again, I felt like something was bumping up against us and against me. And I fought it. I cursed myself relentlessly about, whether it's procrastination or oops, there goes a squirrel. Why is it that I try so hard? I want so badly to succeed and do the right thing, but I feel like I'm just getting dragged down every time. So listen, I still believe that focus and drive matters. I don't think there's any question about it, but it's not the whole story. And for many entrepreneurs, particularly with ADHD, the advice of just being consistent and hustle harder, it feels like they're pushing up against a brick wall. And that's why I'm truly excited about today's conversation with my guest, Alyece Smith. She helps ADHD entrepreneurs create systems that actually work with their brains. But what I love about her approach is that it's not just about forcing yourself into, someone else's mold, if you will. It's about finding momentum that feels natural, sustainable, and energizing. And I think you'll find her, whether you're dealing with ADHD or not, I think you're going to find her ideas, both practical and deeply relatable. And so my guest today is, in fact, Alyece Smith. She's the CEO of Socially Ausome, and that's spelled AUSOM. She's the host of the ADHD CEO Podcast and the author of the book, What Now, Mama? Alyece helps ADHD entrepreneurs build simple, dopamine-friendly sales systems that work with their brains and not against them. She helps, to, to go, I guess you could say, go from burnout to breakthroughs. I mean, that's just a nice way to put it. And she's on a mission to show us that when you have the right system, the the focus flows, the momentum sticks, the growth becomes repeatable. Alyece Smith again is my guest, and I just can't wait to get this started. Alyece, thank you so much for being a guest on Grow Yourself.
Yes, thank you so much for asking me to be on the show today. I'm really excited to just dive into this.
Well, we won't tell them the behind the scenes scenario about how this all came about. But okay, so you were actually on an airplane when I invited you, and you're like, "Yeah, give me a chance to land, and we'll jump right in." I thought, you know what, that's a good ADHD move right there. So
It
ADHD people are spontaneous, aren't we?
We are, and I always have backups for my backups because I have this fear of forgetting. And so I keep a spare mic in my car, like a travel mic. I even have like a travel laptop. I know that sounds wild, but I just do. I have to prepare, and those are some of the things I teach my clients over and over again. Is that once you understand how your brain operates, you feel more prepared. And a lot of times it's just having that feeling of being prepared. So, yep, I am so grateful and I just happen to be free. So this is divine intervention, if I must say so.
I'm 100% on board with that. Listen, before we get started, would you just tell, our audience, who is Alyece Smith? Tell us a little bit about your background, where you brought up, whatever. I mean, just feel free
Yeah.
to let us know who you are.
Born and raised in the South, right here from Kill, Mississippi, a graduate of University of Southern Miss, got married, had 3 kids, fairly young. It's common to get married younger in the South, but
Hmm.
love my life, love my children, love my family. And I will say growing up, I know a lot of times this especially for your audience that has ADHD or is even questioning maybe their lack of focus or neurodivergency, they could relate to this. But
Yeah.
growing up, very driven kid, made all A's, top of my class, all the things. But internally, I knew I thought differently. I processed
Mm.
differently. I questioned everything. Why,
Mhm.
why, why? That's pretty typical of a kid. So I don't think it really alarmed anyone. I know my children are always asking, but for me, it was this fear of never being enough, this
Mm.
constant exhaustion as a teenager. And
Mm.
what it really came down to is at that point in time, we didn't know enough about ADHD. We did not know enough about autism to label them properly. And it really was just this idea of you just can't control your children, right? That was,
Mm.
I know what was told to me as a child. And so it wasn't until I got into my teenage years and got diagnosed. But even then, after being diagnosed, it was a secret. No one could possibly
Interesting.
know because I would lose credibility. Employers would not think I was professional. They would not want to hire me. So I honestly did not tell the world about my ADHD until probably 2 years ago. And this is not something new for me. This has been going
Wow.
on forever, but it was this unspoken secret. And so in 2022, I worked through corporate. I did all the things, had all 3 children. And in 2022, I decided to leave my job in
Mm.
corporate.
Wow.
And in 2018, my middle child, was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And
Interesting.
I found what was supposed to be support was more like a
Mm.
scavenger hunt,
Oh
right? We lack
my.
therapies, lack
Yeah.
resources in our area, and nationwide, not just our area. There's constant wait lists. So that is why Awesome is spelled AUSOME. It's a name play on being an autism family. But I
Mm.
just got to a point in my career and in motherhood that I could no longer put my job in front of my child's healthcare. I was having to turn down therapy options because the only time they would have was 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. And I'm like, oh, I'm at a desk till 5. So that's not going to work for me. And I left. I started Socially Awesome. I did digital marketing in corporate. So that was very easy to transition into entrepreneurship. And as I got into entrepreneurship, I'll be honest, I spiraled for a while because,
Hmm.
like you said, I had these brilliant ideas. I would have these conversations with other people in
Yeah.
network, and they're like, man, that's genius. I hadn't thought of that. But I
Right.
didn't know how to execute on those ideas. And so I wasted a lot of time and a lot of money and lack of follow through, things where everything was 80% done, 80% done. And so, with all of
Please
that being
stop
said,
talking about me like that. It's just not nice.
always feel like I attack people. But with that being said, from there, since 2022, I've really grown Socially Awesome. But about a year ago, I had this just clarity moment. So it's always been on my vision board, especially since becoming an autism mom, to start a nonprofit to serve these families. Because I was fortunate enough to be able to do whatever it took to get my son resources. And I bought a second car just to be able to put miles on, just to travel an hour one way to get resources. I worked extra hours, picked up overtime, whatever I had to do. But I know that's not everyone's case. And so I'm a very impact over income person. I'm a very driven person. So that had always been on my vision board. But about a year ago, when really getting into starting the nonprofit and writing our mission, writing our vision, and writing our values, I also went back to my business vision and mission and values and said, I've been serving people on this level for a while, but I still don't feel like they're seeing the real me. And
Mm.
as someone in marketing, your story is your brand. It is your best marketing. And so I ripped it all down, burned it down at midnight, like most ADHDers do, and started from scratch. But I said, you know what? I am coming in 100% me. I'd always been
Wow.
authentic. It's not like I hid anything, but I never felt like the whole band-aid was ripped off. So
Right.
about a year ago, I said, everything, I'm going all out. And that connects my mission of serving these children, because autism is a form of neurodivergency, with also serving these adults that are like me. And so
Mhm.
it connected my give back with my business, and published the book that I wish someone would have given me the day my son was diagnosed. And it's just been just
Wow.
kind of spiraling from there. But I've never felt freer that it's out there.
Oh
You know,
man.
I've never felt more aligned with my business, my mission, and who I'm meant to serve now that I no longer have to, we call it masking in the
Yeah.
neurodivergent world. No, now that I don't have to mask. You
Yeah.
hire me for my brain and it just happens to be neurodivergent. And if that
Wow.
bothers you, we're probably not meant to be working together. So,
No, that's crazy. Listen, could you just, define a couple of things for me? First, I think neurodivergency is it's a relatively new term, and I
yeah,
don't know how many people understand that. And then and then ask you what is ADHD. But first, with neurodivergency, please.
of course. So, divergent just means different, right?
Different.
So
Yeah.
ADHD, autism, ODD, OCD, ADD, which isn't typically diagnosed anymore, but I don't want to get into too much medical jargon, is all considered neurodivergent.
Okay.
And so they're neurodevelopmental. I don't like the word disorders, but that's the technical term. There's
Sure.
nothing, disordered about us,
It's
but
all
they're
good.
different. Something is different than the typical brain you would see in a lab. And so neurodivergent is kind of the overlying term to use for any of those diagnoses.
Okay. Perfect.
And so,
And
yeah.
now about ADHD. What is ADHD for, how do you define it?
Oh, yeah. So it is one of the most common neurodevelopmental diagnosis. And surprisingly, for most, if you look at the CDC's statistics, out of all of the people in the United States that have ADHD, most were diagnosed in adulthood. And so we very often, as society, I believe, think of children, typically a
Yeah.
boy who's
Yeah.
bouncing off the walls and he can't pay attention. But there's so many misconceptions. And so to put it in a very simple system or simple terminology, ADHD is when your brain is always seeking dopamine. It's a neurological
Interesting.
difference in how we process dopamine. And so often you can see things as overstimulated or understimulated. It's not necessarily distraction. A lot of times it's boredom. And
Yeah.
so our brains, because they lack dopamine or how we process it, are always craving novelty or challenge, which is why ADHD people are 3 times more likely to be an entrepreneur because they
Interesting.
seek a challenge versus sitting at a desk for 9 to 5, doing the same thing every day for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And so when used effectively,
Yeah.
it's a golden ticket.
That's really, really fascinating. I mean, just this little bit, just personally helps me to hear you talk about this. I'll tell you two quick things. So I
Yeah,
spent most of my life in or not most, but now it's not as much, but 20 years in the Air Force, as did my wife.
yeah,
And and I don't believe that my ADHD sort of revealed itself there because I was under such a structured environment and I understood that. Now, as I now understand it and look back, I can tell you where it reared its ugly head. But from the standpoint of being productive, it wasn't as big of a problem because, again, you kind of had your standing orders about what you
yeah,
needed to do.
yes,
And it is different in corporate because you're in the military and you have to follow orders and you have to get things done and yada yada yada. So that's the first thing. The second thing that really resonates with me about what you're saying about ADHD, and that is that even though I am a driven person, the one thing that drove me to be an entrepreneur, to work for myself, was my desire to not limit myself. In other words, I
yes,
if I can put it this way, I wanted a scattered brain. I wanted to be able to do this, 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 and this, and as many things that I could think about. Now, I caution people about that idea, but nonetheless, that's what drove me really to be independent. I wanted to do all the different things that I wanted to do, and that's fairly typical, right? Somebody
Yeah.
that can be distracted if they wanted to.
Well, 100%. And well, first and foremost, thank you for your service, and
Thank
make
you.
sure you thank your wife as well.
Well,
I will say, from my experience and my research, and I will put that in there. I'm not a doctor. Okay. Everything I convey is from, obviously I have formal training, but didn't go to medical school, don't like needles, just not a thing for me. But I
fair enough.
will tell you that everything you're saying is what we don't realize until we've taken ourselves out of the situation. And so just like you, in corporate, I was at one point, I had a boss call me the golden goose, because if she gave me a project, she knew it was not only going to get done, but she knew it was going to outperform any
Wow.
expectations that leadership had set, and it was going to work. And we often think, like I said, we can't focus, or we're told as children that we can't focus, or you're scattered, or why do you ask so many questions, or why are you always distracted? But the truth is, we can hyper focus and use our driven personalities. It's very common for someone with ADHD to be extremely driven, achievement oriented, always looking for what's next, what's next, what's next. And that's our dopamine seeking.
Yes.
But I was able to take a project that they gave me at work. And I mean, I did it, I exceeded expectations always. And the problem with that is when I came off that high, or maybe I still didn't feel like I gave my best work. I still always criticized it, even though everyone else was like, that is amazing. This was everything we expected and more. I still criticized myself, because what's next? This still could have been better. It still could have been better. And that's some of that ruminating that we do. And so it's not that we can't focus. A lot of times it's that our attention is on everything. Right. And you walk into that room, like when I get up and I walk into my kitchen in the morning and I'm about to wake my kids up for school. I notice everything. I notice the crumbs someone left on the counter and did not wipe up. I notice the fact that the microwave still has 3 seconds left on it, which meant somebody got up and got a midnight snack and stopped it at 3 seconds so that it wouldn't make it up. I noticed that somebody left, my attention's on everything. And that's where the lack of focus can come in. So it's not that we can't focus, it's channeling that. And when we're under a situation like the military and someone says, do this, do this, do this, or even at work with, maybe you have standard operating procedures, we outperform a lot of times. It's not until that we get bored and we feel limited, just like you said, that's when it becomes a spiral.
Yeah.
And so it is a struggle for a lot of entrepreneurs, because they don't have that accountability and they don't have someone saying, do this and go do it well.
Right.
And so setting that accountability for yourself in an entrepreneurial system is hard for most.
So is it then the case for, and let's say entrepreneurs, and I do want to ask that question about how it typically shows up with entrepreneurs, although you're explaining it now, but is it the reason why, and you said everything was always 80%, 80%. And again, something that I cleanly recognize when you said that, but is it because the sort of, for lack of a better term, that the dopamine runs dry, 80%, and then you're going to move on to the next thing? Because I am that way, move on to the next thing. And once I get bored, it's the next thing.
Right.
Is that kind of what's happening? Is that your...
Yeah. So when you're at a job, right, they give you a deadline. And so that is definitely something I teach my clients. You have to create fake deadlines for yourself. You have to. And if you don't, you get that dopamine rush from planning. Let's say I'm going to launch a new product next week. It's so exciting to our brains to, in the planning process. That's why we like organizing, even though nothing ever stays organized. We love that part, right? We love creating new Trello boards, new project management tools, signing up the software, like building the landing. All that's fun. And then when it's almost over, it's like, oh man, okay, it's almost over. And our brain is already started on the next process or the next product, going back to the planning phase. And so we very often love the planning phase. We do not like the execution phase, because that's boring, right? Once this product is launched, I have to sell it. every day I have to do the same thing to make sales, and it's boring and I don't want to do that. So that is where we stop when it's almost done and we go ahead and go to the next.
Wow.
And so it's when it comes to that mundane tasks that dopamine drops. It's like painting a bedroom, right? You get 2 walls painted and then it's like, oh, I've already done 2. And so then you kind of go and you start something else. And then 3 years later, your bathroom only has 2 walls painted because now you've done 2 of the same wall. And it's like, this isn't fun anymore. This is boring. I'm doing the same thing. So yes, it's all about.
That's fascinating. And it makes me think about, perhaps why. Well, I used to ask this question of myself all the time, and that is that, and you kind of said it earlier on, I'm an idea guy. I can come up with some of the best ideas,
Yeah.
but either once I move into the idea, into, like the details of it, the boring details, or I think about the idea too long, and this happens constantly. I start off with this great idea. If too much time goes by, then I suddenly go, maybe that's not a good idea. But I do that all the time. And what I'm thinking here is, and maybe you recognize this, is that again, this big dopamine rush when the creativity comes and you're ideating, and you're like, wow, this is really great. But prolong too much or get too deep into the details too soon, suddenly, and I literally asked myself, was that actually yesterday? It was a great idea. It was off the charts. Now it's like, is that a recognizable habit, behavior, set of behaviors, way of thinking?
Yes. So hopefully you can't hear what's going on, but I live very close to Stennis for anybody that might be able to hear that in the background. They're testing rockets today,
Oh,
apparently.
nice.
I know. I just got a news alert. So hopefully you can't hear that. I'm pretty loud. So, but yes, so our brains,
Yeah, we can't hear it.
Everything is either urgent or non-existent.
Oh,
that is how it operates. And so that is one of the reasons that we often start 10 things at one time, because our brain gets the excitement of the dopamine, the idea, the creativity, the sparks. And we're like, I got to start that. I got to start that. I got to start that. It's the same reason you have 118 tabs open on your computer, because you had a thought and you had to check on it right now. And we very often get bored when there's too much time in between. So absolutely 1000%, that is very common. And I teach a couple different ways as far as, because one, it can be a good thing, right? If your idea that you have, I'm going to go start this YouTube channel, and you're doing that in avoiding finishing what you're supposed to be finishing. I will often tell my clients, like, give it a 24-hour rule. Put it on, I have what I call a digital parking lot. It's just a Trello board with all of my ideas on it. Sit 24 hours on it. Is it a distraction, or is it actually an executable idea? If it is, let's go ahead and start making a plan, but don't get started on that idea yet, because it will distract you and you won't finish what you're doing. But our brain often especially gets those type of ideas when we are seeking that dopamine, because we're avoiding finishing something else or doing something else.
So it sounds like one of the keys is, in fact, recognizing the relationship that an ADHD person has with dopamine, and understanding that, that it's either, I think, like you said, urgent or non-existent. So we can say dopamine rush or nothing at all, and that there's something in between that we need to grasp onto, right?
Yes.
Maybe control our anxiety or enthusiasm. I don't know. I'm asking.
Yes, 100%. And so that is often why, let's say you're working on a big project, and this is very common for people to get in what we call a hyperfocus state, and nothing else matters. So I can't go to bed until this is done. But you look back and your kids have torn up the entire house. Your dishes haven't been done in 3 days. Your laundry's piled up to the ceiling, because the only thing that mattered was that project.
Yeah.
And so that is very common. And we execute really well in those phases, but obviously it can lead to extreme burnout. You can have a lot of other things happen, like my kids going, yo, mom, you've been in your office for like 72 hours. Are you coming out? That's what I was experiencing before I started really getting clear on my own ADHD and recognizing these things. But that's where that non-existent comes in. Nothing else mattered during that time period. It's the same reason we often will have, 185 unread text messages, because we were focused on everything else, and it's like they don't even matter right now.
I
And
resemble
so
that remark.
I have a lot of text messages to check up on because I've been at a conference for 5 days, so I will get to them. But it really is recognizing those things. And
Yeah.
one thing that you said is understanding how to say, okay, is this, dopamine seeking, urgent, has to be done right now, versus non-existent. And that is why I am a systematic person. I operate in a very systematic way, and I have to.
Yeah.
Because the more I learned about my brain, the more I learned about my habits. Yes, you can change habits. Yes, you can do the 21-day habit tracking or whatever all these apps that I've downloaded that I've never actually used say. But the truth is, I am a creature of habit. And so it is more efficient for me, and I'm a happier person if I just find ways to work with it. And
Very
so kind of
interesting.
like we talked at the beginning of that episode, I have backups for backups of everything,
Yeah.
because I just anticipate. And while the productivity gurus will tell you, well, just make a checklist. So before you get in your car, you know exactly what you need to pack. Well, that's great. If I could remember where the checklist is, or I could remember to actually check the checklist. So that's probably not going to happen. So I would rather just have a travel bag in the back of my car that goes with me everywhere. And so those are things that where you have to kind of tune out that OG productivity,
Yeah.
and some of it's amazing. Obviously, time blocking helps, all of those things. But we as ADHD entrepreneurs and ADHD people in general have to
Yes.
learn how to work with dopamine.
Yes.
If there's one thing you get from this episode, that is it. And the more you learn about your brain and
Yeah.
how you operate, the more you understand and not criticize yourself for being that way, the more you will be able to flow with it.
Listen, I've got some serious, serious battle scars from the amount of criticizing that I did on myself.
Yeah.
Again, I don't like playing victim, but it's in full transparency. I can tell you, I've got some serious battle scars. So let's do this, if you don't mind. I
Yeah.
want to, and I do want to maybe mention about children as well, maybe towards the end about this sort of thing, but just kind of sticking with the entrepreneurs and maybe the professionals, or let's just say the adult ADHD. Let's start with this question, sort of this, not question, sort of this statement. You might be ADHD if, let's just try to, and again, you were very transparent to say, hey, I'm not a doctor, this, that, and the other. So we understand that. But from your standpoint, really, I consider you an expert, and you've done a lot of work in this arena.
Yeah.
What was the answer to that? What is the fill in the blank? You might be ADHD if you.
I know. Okay. This is a hard one
Okay.
because when we're looking at neurodivergency, everyone is going to have very different symptoms. And very often women have different symptoms than men.
Yeah.
For women, very often we have more of that hyper focused state, a lot more internal grief, almost grieving that we can't live up to that expectation. We often are very driven. But on the inside, we're never enough for ourselves, never enough for other people. Obviously, the focus and attentiveness is very common in all people with ADHD. And again, it's not usually lack of attention. It's your attention is scattered in many places.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of different symptoms. My husband, so fun fact, my entire family is neurodivergent. So I know I mentioned my middle child, Caden, who has autism, but my oldest and my youngest both are ADHD, and my husband is also ADHD. So we are a very different family over here. We should have started one of those family
I've got
YouTube
these
channels,
visions,
right? But even just in all of us, you'll see different things.
Sure.
So my husband is a little bit more of the impulsive, like I'm going to start this project, and he definitely does focus to get the project done, but he has a lot more of the ups and downs with the energy levels.
Yes.
So one day he is all at it, and the next day he's a potato, and then
Yes.
it's like that's And that's because dopamine has so much to do with your energy levels as well. Whereas me, I'm pretty consistent energy wise. It's in here. So there are
Very
days
interesting.
it's like my brain won't turn on today. I can't even think today. But energy wise, I'm usually about the same. With my oldest son, I saw a lot more anxiety. He was a very anxious child, and that was his fear of not being enough, living up to expectations. He does what we call ruminating. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very common for people to ruminate with ADHD, where they replay
Mm-hmm.
conversations that they had 5 years ago. And that's really, again, just that fear of what if people see that I'm different? What if people see, you know, that I forgot or I dropped the ball on something. And then my daughter is oof, my daughter. I could do a whole episode about her, but she is very she is all or nothing. I am going all in on this, or it doesn't
Oh,
even
my.
matter. It's not a big deal. And so that can lead to her, going all in on this art project. And then her room is a complete disaster. And then when
Mm.
it's time to clean it up, it's like, oh no, where do she doesn't know where to start. So she very often needs someone to lead her through step 1, 2, 3, 4. So I definitely recommend if you are struggling or you even have a question, go get an evaluation. It doesn't take very long. Go talk with the doctor, but it's a very hard question to answer just because
No.
every single person's experience is different. And it's also very common for these neurological diagnosis to cross over. So my son with autism also was diagnosed with ADHD. So sometimes you'll see some crossover between them, and you don't want to self-diagnose with the wrong
Yeah.
wrong thing.
No, I
So
think you're very important there because I do know that, at least I've read this before, that sometimes, you talked about your husband having these dips, these peaks and valleys, that the wrong person might tell you you're bipolar.
yeah,
You see, and that would be, as you
yeah,
said, the wrong
you don't want
diagnosis,
it's wrong. Yeah,
right?
for sure. Yes. And so there's studies out there. Again, I didn't do them, not the doctor, but there are case studies that show as we age, hormones can also affect dopamine. So if we know
Interesting.
our brains are already seeking dopamine, lacking dopamine, and then you start having hormonal dips, which in
Mm,
women, estrogen starts dropping like at age 30. That's why they say we have a ticking clock. So, especially in men as well,
yeah,
men's testosterone usually
yeah.
lasts quite a bit longer than women's estrogen does. But I know in women, that's why most women are not diagnosed until adulthood
Wow.
or late teens, whereas boys are more common to be diagnosed as children. And
Yeah.
that's just because we as women can mask it a little bit longer until that estrogen starts dropping and it goes bonkers.
Wow. You
So
know,
it is very common.
I really appreciate that you took the question the way that you needed to, and that was explaining the idea
Yeah.
that, all ADHD people are not alike. And
Yeah.
because even as you were describing some of the things that you earlier on, I was like, that's not really me. And then there was other things I was like, that is me. Very,
Yeah.
very interesting. So let's move to the next piece here then
Yeah.
and talk about the blessings that come with ADHD. Because there is this sometimes, I think that we look at any of these sorts of, if you want to call them disorders or conditions or whatever, there are blessings that come with them. I can tell you from my own standpoint,
Yeah.
of my experience and where ADHD has been a real benefit for me. In fact, I've capitalized on it. So maybe share some of those sorts of things if you don't mind.
Yes. Yeah. So it's very well known that as ADHD people, we are really good at creativity and problem
Yep.
solving. And so I know as a child that got me in trouble because I
Mm.
always had these ideas. And
Mhm.
we're very often in society not allowed to have ideas.
Mhm.
The adults have the
Yes.
ideas. You do
Yes.
what the adults tell you to do. So
Yes.
a lot of times as a child, we're labeled as difficult or problematic. But creativity and problem solving are the two biggest skills for someone with ADHD. And in entrepreneurship, that is a gift, right? That is a
Yes.
gift. And I can tell you as a coach that has worked with many entrepreneurs, ADHD, neurodivergent, and not what we would call neurotypical, my ADHD entrepreneurs have no problems with ideas. It is my job to rein in their ideas and be like, okay,
Yes.
let's execute one at a time. Let's build systems so that you can actually stick with this idea and make it profitable. So it's not just a passion project. Whereas some of my neurotypical entrepreneurs, it was like, I just don't know what to do. Like, I'm stuck. I'm not sure. And so when you learn how to rein that in, it is gold. It is
Wow.
pure gold. And then also, when we use our hyper focus states to our advantage, we can, I have always said this, I can get more done in 8 hours than most people can get done in an entire month.
That's crazy,
I'm not
man.
kidding. It's wild. And people ask me that my entire life. How do you get so much done? How do you manage all this? And unfortunately, for most of my life, it was at the expense of my health and me
Yeah.
burning myself out, not sleeping well, and all of those things. And it wasn't until I started understanding how to use those hyper focus moments to my advantage. But when you are in that state and you can execute quickly, you can
Yeah.
capitalize on that creativity.
Yeah.
Whereas someone that might not be able to channel that hyperactivity or that hyper focus to the same advantage might take 6 months to get an idea. And we know as
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, the faster we can get it to market the correct way, not
Yeah.
done, the better the result we can have. And so if you have these ideas and you can execute on them quickly,
Yeah.
ultimately it can be a huge advantage in your
Wow,
business.
I love what you're saying there. And we could even extend this notion that you're talking about beyond ADHD to just the simple premise of self-awareness, understanding who you are and how you work best, and therefore how to capitalize, whether it's through ADHD or just, like you said, neurodivergent, what normal, you say? Uh,
Yeah,
you
neurotypical.
Yeah,
Neurotypical.
neurotypical. Yeah, that it still comes down to just being aware of these
Yeah.
things, the way that you are, and the things you can capitalize. I'll give you one quick example that I know that my ADHD didn't know it earlier on, but I know it now. So both my wife and I grew up in theater. She grew up in theater. We ended up in this group in the Air Force that was it's hard to explain, but it's called Tops and Blue. It was a big entertainment group that toured the world, basically entertaining the troops and these other sorts of things. Okay. So having said all that, once when we finished that touring, we started our own entertainment company. So we're still in the military, but we put on these really big shows. And here's my point. We put on these big talent shows and things. I mean, we just loved doing it. Well, I noticed that when it came to that sort of thing, I mean, 'cause you have to have some skill, of course, but I noticed that I could think of 10 things at the same time. I was such a good producer and director, not just because Kevin was good, but because there was something about that field of work, and the same thing happened in music, that I could think of 10 things at the same time and keep them in track. And I would be in a flow state too.
Yes.
So and it's just something that I realized that this must have to do with my ADHD, that my capacity, whether I learned it through over the years because I was always distractible, or whether it's just sort of a fundamental gift,
Yeah.
whatever it was. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying?
It does. And I mean, theater, you're thinking creativity, right? So
Yes.
when we're able to use our creative side of our brain and harness that flow state, absolutely, we
Oh,
can be unstoppable. And I mean, there's so many, you can Google it. We would be here all day if I tried to list them, but there are so many people in history. I mean, just entrepreneurs that are crazy successful,
yeah.
Olympians that are crazy successful, that now have come out about their ADHD because it's becoming more accepted now.
Yes.
We're not having to hide it as much, but it's wild how it has helped them become the best in their field and how they were able to get into that flow state to achieve what they've achieved.
Yeah. Gosh, I love it. Okay,
Yeah.
coach. Okay, coach. So let's talk just a few, I mean, one solution in my way of thinking is to go get your book, Mama, what next?
So what now, Mama?
Oh,
Actually, I
so
got to
what now, Mama? I'm so sorry. Yeah.
So What Now Mama is actually, and I'll tell you really quickly a fun fact about
Please.
this. So I started writing my business book originally, and in writing it, I was struggling on, I was mixing all of the things I wanted to tell every autism mom about how to help her child, and everything I wanted to tell every ADHD entrepreneur about how to help their business. And so with that, I split them. So this is actually for autism moms. I would love for anyone to read it, and you'll learn a lot about neurodivergency in here. But What Now Mama is about raising a neurodivergent child with autism. But Flow First Thinking, my new book that is based on my TED Talk, is actually coming out in the end of November. So I do have a wait list out for that, and I'm very excited. I can't release the book until the TED Talk is released, but I'm very excited. It is ready to go to print as soon as my TED Talk is up and done. I've got less than 30 days.
Wow.
And I'm really excited because this has just been years in the making. It's what I do with my clients, and now I've put it into a book to share. So I do have a wait list you can get on to be able to be first notified when it's dropped. But, and of course, anyone that happens to listen to this, that if you have a child that's neurodivergent, this will absolutely help you. If you have a child with an IEP, or if you just want to dive into it and learn a little bit more, or gift it to an autism mom. But I ended up splitting the books because I said, man, I'm putting too many stories in one.
Yeah. Again, kind of being aware of yourself. So share the title of the coming book again.
Flow First Thinking.
Flow First. Love that. I get it. Yeah, completely. That's good. And I'm going to ask you about that all in just a moment, about where people can find you and sign up for your book and get your book and all that sort of thing. So yeah, let's talk, maybe a solution or two about, let's say that somebody, heard me at the beginning when I said that I was trying to be successful, but always felt like I was getting dragged down by these demons of frustration and not staying, on track and whatever it is. What's the first thing that a person should do if they suspect that there is some neurodivergency going on there?
So I would immediately get an evaluation. And depending on your state, it can also depend on what type of doctor, usually psychologists, psychiatrists, of course, even some medical providers like your general doctor. But I really recommend going to someone that specializes in the brain if possible, and having an evaluation done. And a lot of times, especially in adulthood, they're going to ask you some very uncomfortable questions, and be as honest as possible in that evaluation. There is no shame, in being open and honest, and look for those results. And then once you have the results, if you are neurodivergent and they do give you some sort of diagnosis, then you choose your path of how you want to treat the symptoms. You're not curing ADHD. It's a neurological difference. Your brain's already developed, but because everyone has different symptoms, then you can choose. Some people choose, Western medicine. They take medication. That's a whole other topic. Some people choose a more holistic approach. But I really say choose what's best for you and how you operate. And so I'm open to sharing. I believe the medication has changed my life. I have stopped, blaming myself. But with that, I also go to weekly therapy so that I have someone to just trauma dump on and just unleash. That way I don't do that on my family and my husband. And I also pair that with some holistic supplements. I believe, and it's proven, that our bodies often lack vitamin D, our bodies often lack magnesium. So the more you learn about your, obviously, brain, but also your body as a whole, because it's not just, okay, I'm ADHD. Well, ADHD creates certain habits, which can create other health habits, right? Maybe, because you've been burnt out, you're not sleeping as much. So really learn. I get blood work every 6 weeks, or not 6 weeks, sorry. Ooh, that would be often. Every 6 months, because I have learned that my body has a vitamin D deficiency. And so if that is because of the way my brain processes it or not, who knows? But I know that can also cause energy dips. So I don't want to increase my ADHD medication thinking it's that when it could be vitamin D. So the more you learn about yourself and your body and your brain, talk with your doctor, your medical doctor, your mental health doctor, and come up with a good plan for you.
Very
And then
good.
also look at your surroundings as well, because that's so important. The people you surround yourself with, if they're bashing you for your behaviors, look, you really need to surround yourself with people who also
Yeah,
understand and are compassionate. In general, people should be more kind. But,
sure.
I've had several people in my life that we've had to just bless and release, because that's how I operate.
I
This
love
is how I
that.
go.
Bless
This
and
is how I
release. Yeah.
bless and release. And it was always a problem.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for my children. And
Yeah.
so do what's best for you. That's always my
100%. I love that, and to spend time, to your point, really looking at yourself, maybe even doing your own research. And so let's just say then there's and I know there are people out there who highly suspect they're ADHD. Maybe even you have studied it well enough, they haven't gone and got a diagnosis, but they know good and well because they've done their research and the signs are strong right there. So, what can they do on their own? Let's say they don't want to go get on medication. Like, for instance, what is an ADHD-friendly system? What does that look like?
Yeah. So one thing I really recommend to my clients, obviously brain dumping first, right? Getting everything out.
Mm,
And depending on what your biggest struggle is, I like to try to tackle the smallest struggles first. I know that sounds wild, but because we are dopamine driven, I, I would say, let's just say you write down the 5 things that are just the problems right now. Every day I lose my keys. Every day I'm forgetting that important client meeting. Or maybe it's just I haven't gotten that landing page yet in my business done. Whatever your biggest problems are. Let's start with the smallest one. Because when you can execute quickly and you can finally finish, you get that satisfaction of I check that off my list. I'm going to
mm,
move, you get that dopamine and that motivates you to keep going. So I very often teach my clients to do the dopamine driven reward system.
love that.
And then depending on what their specific problem is, how can we create a system that not only reduces decision fatigue, but also can flow without you? And so examples of that for me, I know every day that I struggle in the afternoons. That's usually kind of when my little lull comes,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Kids get off the bus, we're doing homework, we get the snacks. I come back, work a little bit more. And by, bedtime, shower, dinner, whatever, I'm starting to kind of go down. And that's typical for all people in general, especially if
Sure.
you have a 9 to 5. So for me, I've set up a little system because I would lose track of time. Time blindness could be an entire episode, but it's very common for ADHD people to have time blindness. And so I was finding that every night, 8:30, my kids are supposed to be in bed. 8:35, I'm like, oh man, we haven't had showers yet. We haven't had dinner yet. Like we would just lose all track of time.
Wow.
Now that my kids are in sports, it got worse. So I'm like, how can I create a system that not only holds me accountable, because I'm the one that's supposed to be holding them accountable, but who's going to hold me accountable?
Yeah.
Because my husband's also ADHD. So we both were losing track of time. So I kind of brain dump and look at, okay, these are all the problems that we're having in this scenario. And obviously I can't automate my kids. So in my business, I would set up an automation system of some sort. That's my specialty. But in certain ways I can. So everybody has an Alexa, usually, or some type of Alexa. So I set up routines on Alexa. 6:30 goes off and it says, okay, it's time to start our evening routine.
How
Who's going to get a
interesting.
bath first? Who's going to get a bath first? And you hear the kids, not me, not it. He could go first. I went first last night. But now it's not even, it's just announcing to me, but it's also teaching them, like, we need to be aware of our time.
I love that.
7:30 it goes off and it's like, okay, it's time to get your clothes out for school tomorrow and pack your lunch for tomorrow, get ready. And then 8, it's like, hey, you got 30 minutes left till bedtime. Go ahead and pick up your rooms for a few minutes, go to the potty, whatever you need to do, right? And then at 8:30 it says, okay, it's bedtime. The internet's going off. have a good night, see you in the morning. And then we have another one in the morning that does that. So the morning routine. And so, people will have their own opinions of how that's
I think
Alexa
that's
raising
brilliant.
children.
I mean,
I love it because it's
yeah,
holding me accountable. And if I am busy or got distracted doing something, I'm like, oh man, okay, all right, it's time to get moving. It puts me back on track. But also, it's teaching my kids to be aware of the time, and it's kind of, in my opinion, teaching them a little bit of responsibility because
yes,
I very
100%.
often don't to I I don't want to say I don't have to be the bad guy, but at 8:30 when it's time
Right.
to go to bed, they put themselves
Yeah.
to bed
Yeah.
and I tell them good night rather
Yeah.
than give me the iPad.
Oh,
Rather than
there goes Alexa. It's time to, yeah, I love that, man.
them
Yeah.
some accountability. And so that is, in my business, I would have an automation system. Like, okay, what kind of workflow can we have? How can we automate this? What kind of softwares can we use? But in my life, those are the type of systems I have.
Yeah.
And I always look for any type of system
Yeah.
that can hold me accountable and teach my kids how to start holding themselves accountable. Because if I understood how my brain operated 30 years ago,
Yeah.
I would have skipped all those years of not thinking I was enough
Yeah.
and thinking I was difficult and believing all the lies I told myself, because you're the only person that knows every lie you've ever
Yeah.
told yourself.
Wow. I think that's
Yeah.
so brilliant, and just the idea of how you expressed how you use Alexa, I think just gives us a sense that of what a system looks like. And it's a very
Yeah.
simple, like you said, it works without you. It just happens.
Yeah.
Now I will say that I have my own Alexa as well. Actually,
Yeah.
her name is Jane, and
Oh,
that's my wife. And she is the complete opposite of ADHD. She can, I hate to say this, I mean, because I'm being a little bit too transparent, but when I think about going somewhere to an appointment or let's say down into Nashville or something, I think, okay, I need to be there. I need to leave at this time is what I think.
right.
And if I say something to Jane, um, she'll say something now, Kevin, I was checking the radar. The rain's going to come down, and I mean, she'll just tell me these things that make me go, "Oh man, I may need to leave 30 minutes earlier." Well, I don't. This whole time blindness thing, I wouldn't. I still don't think about it many, many times, and it's very beneficial to me. But by the way, when she's looking for some really serious ideas or somebody to talk something through and really to problem solve, she
Yeah.
comes here, and,
Yes.
and we recognize this in each other. So if it's not Alexa, if it's not some other some system, people who are partners, be that,
Yeah.
business partners or married or whatever the case might be, you find your, as we call them, superpowers, and you use them to collaborate with. Yes.
100%. Yes. And my husband's ADHD, but like I said, we're two totally
Yeah.
different symptoms. So he is very much the problem solver. He does a lot of
Love
like
it.
logistical things in his job. He's amazing with them, the
Mm,
steps. And I'm
yes.
very much the creative brain. And so,
Love
I
it.
have an idea and I'm like, yo, I want to do this. Like, and sometimes he brings me back to earth and he's like, okay, like let's logistically talk this out. And so he compartmentalizes things and he's like,
Mm,
yes, it's really we're looking at creating these systems, we want to look at what is the actual problem and then
hmm.
reverse engineer that. So,
Love
what
it.
are the steps we have to do that's maybe causing this problem? And then, what tools can we use in those steps? And so, you could do this in your business, you could do this in your life. That's like a very simple one. But I mean, we have those all the time. And like I said, decision fatigue. So we didn't really get into that a lot about with the Alexa example, but part of the overwhelm that comes with ADHD is the decision fatigue.
Yeah.
And so another very simple system I use, and it's crazy and it sounds silly and whatever. I'm, in my mid 30s and I wear almost the same thing every day. I have a ton of t-shirts and a ton
Stop.
of like polos and stuff that I have put my logo on. Okay. And it's like my little uniform. And so that way I avoid the entire going into my closet. I'm in something different today because I'm traveling, but I got a logo on under it. But I had a bunch of t-shirts made and a bunch of hats made with my logo on it. And so every single day, because I'm usually behind a computer like this, I wear something with my brand on it.
I
And then
love that.
I avoid the entire problem of going in my closet and going, what
Yeah.
am I going to wear today? Nothing fits. Oh my gosh. And then I'm so overwhelmed. And then the next thing you know, it's 40 minutes and time blindness, and I haven't gotten dressed because I'm so stressed that nothing fits. Because of course I'm a woman, nothing ever fits. And so I avoided that entire problem by ordering some branded t-shirts. And so yes, I work for myself. Yes, I'm an entrepreneur, but I wear a little uniform, pants, and a logo shirt every day. I eat the same thing for lunch every single day, and it goes in the air fryer. It takes about 6 minutes because I cannot stand sitting over the stove for 30 minutes. My brain's like, I could be doing something else. Like, why am I watching this boil? Right. So I buy simple things for lunch. I eat them until I'm bored with them.
Yeah.
I find something else. Like, I have become a creature of some of those habits because it's reduced decisions. And so I don't spend
Wow.
an hour in the kitchen every day going, oh, we don't have anything to eat.
Yes.
Man, what am I going to do? I pick something I like. I eat it every day until I'm bored. And then I
That's
pick something.
I think that's such a great idea because you're right. Again, be it ADHD or some other rationale or reason, decision fatigue is a real thing. We also know that sometimes you will stress and ruminate over something, and
Mhm.
even if you make the wrong decision, you feel good because you just made the decision.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
to your point, the idea that you're expressing here is to put these simple ideas and systems, be that wearing the same shirt or whatever it is, it reduces decisions, therefore reduces the stress.
Yes, exactly.
I love
Absolutely.
this. Well,
And it gives
listen,
you dopamine because you're done, right? You made the
yes,
decision, like you said.
yes,
So
I love
100%
it.
find the
This
problem.
this is so good and so practical. So just two more quick things. One,
Yeah.
just maybe briefly, I do want to ask about children and ADHD or neurodivergency or whatever the case might be. And I want to bring up this point right here and just ask you to comment on it. So I know I happen to be a middle school tennis coach. I've been doing this for many years, so I see a lot of middle schoolers come through and, some that you suspect are this or that. But there's also certainly a lot of discourse going on out there about the overdiagnosis of ADHD or whatever the case might be. So I guess I want to sort of pose that to you. What are your thoughts about that? And therefore, what do you suggest for parents as they start to watch their kids develop and try to understand some sort of neurodivergency without overdiagnosing?
Yeah, of course. So, I'll put that plug and that disclaimer in there again that this is from my lived experience, and every parent is going to have their own opinion, their own experience with their children.
Sure.
But what I have done, because I do stay up, especially with all of the political and news around autism, because there was a
Hmm.
massive announcement recently
Yeah.
from
That,
the White House.
yeah.
Um, as far as overdiagnosing, do I believe that possibly something could be causing more children to have this, which we know if it did, it would be in the actual developmental stages of the brain. So it would be very early on in life, if not even in the fetus, because it's science about the neurological differences. Yeah, I mean, I think something could be there. And also we have, we have a lot of people that have been diagnosed and they're having children, right? So
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, a lot of the increase is around the awareness and the science. Now that we have it and we know it, we're
Yeah.
able to diagnose earlier, which will only
Yeah.
help. But overdiagnosing, I do feel like, especially when it's really young. So with ADHD, in my experience and in my state, that diagnosis usually comes from an observation form the parent fills out, and often a teacher. In our state, they will ask a teacher or someone other than the parent to send in a form.
Yeah.
Um, and do I believe that people could answer those questions just because the child is maybe has other behavioral or maybe
And this is
is,
my point. Yes.
yeah,
I,
100%. I do believe they could sway answers. Um, with autism and other neurodivergence, autism usually has more physical signs that a doctor can screen a lot earlier. So, like my son
yeah.
was diagnosed with autism at 2 years, 8 months,
Yeah.
and he had some very physically recognizable
Yeah.
signs: severe lack of eye contact, the covering of the ears. He had some sensory processing. So those are a little bit easier. ADHD, do I believe people could overdiagnose? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And do I believe a doctor could potentially just write a prescription to satisfy the parent? Yes, I do.
And this, no, you're hitting right on it, Alyece. And I appreciate you parsing that quite well. And my thinking about it is, again, I don't know this sort of things the way that you do. I just have some basic observations and read a little bit. But I think what you know, I can infer in what you're saying is that, it's let's go back to what you said earlier, and that is that all ADHD um, diagnosed, it's not the same. So to not categorize it in either your child has it or it doesn't, I suppose, wouldn't it be fair to say that there may be children that have some level of ADHD, but could just very well be worked through with good parenting or with some discipline or something, that they don't need to go down the road of getting medications or even any serious adaptations. And then there might be the other side where it's so bad, so difficult that maybe medication is warranted. And I guess that's the big point, right?
Yeah, and that's the
One
hard
big
part,
point.
right? Because the signs of ADHD in a child can look like anything from fidgeting, losing items, squirming, talking too much, careless mistakes. That sounds like every
Yeah.
3 to 5 year old ever.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
right.
but it is harder to diagnose efficiently at a very young age for ADHD. Now, like I said, with autism, if you have concerns about your child being autistic and they have some of those signs, uh, early screening is best,
Yeah.
1000%. But very often, a lot of these doctors and states will not typically diagnose ADHD until the child's been in school for at least a year so that they can get a teacher's opinion. But
Yeah.
even a teacher, she's got 25, 30 kids in her class, she can't pay attention to
Yeah.
every child that
Right.
detailed. So
That's true.
it is, I do agree that we came to this point where I think we were maybe overdiagnosing, and even as society, because of the way society looks at ADHD, that I mean, I can tell you how many people crack jokes. I was at a professional business conference this week, and I was having a conversation with someone, and they asked me what I do. I'm explaining to them, and they said, "Well, we all kind of have ADHD, huh?" And I was like, "That's not really funny
No.
because I know it's a joke and it's a common joke,
Right.
and I mean, I laugh at it, yes, but the world has started moving faster. Everyone
Mm.
is consuming more. And so are we all overstimulated? 1000%. The
Yes.
difference is a person that has ADHD on the inside, they're blaming themselves. They
Yes.
have severe
Yes.
guilt, they have anxiety. It's
Yeah.
not just a joke.
There's some
And so
real
it's
suffering going
very
on. Yeah.
hard to know in a
Yeah.
child
Yeah.
and to have a child tell you that. So
Yes.
it is definitely something to keep your eye on and watch. But if you have concerns about yourself or your child, get an opinion. And if you don't trust the doctor, get three
Yet
opinions.
another one. That's right. Beautifully said.
I'm
Beautifully
all
said.
about getting multiple opinions
I
before
agree.
making a decision.
That's right. Well, listen, wow, what a conversation. I mean, goodness gracious, you're such a great thinker in this realm from the standpoint that, what I said in my early monologue, and that is just so practical what you're telling the me and our viewers. So, Alyece Smith, will you tell everybody where can they find you? Where can they contact you? Where can they get in on that book, by the way, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
one that's coming out?
of course. So I am active on Facebook. I have a business page and I have a personal page. You can connect with me on either one. I'm sure my name will be in the episode. So
Yes, it
there
will.
is, you're not going to find anyone else with that spelling. Don't worry. I'm also on Instagram, of course. So my tag on Instagram is socially.awesome, and that's AUSOME. And you'll find my link in bio. The link will actually be up today. So I know by the time this airs, it will be in there. We just dropped yesterday the trailer for the new book. So this is all you are getting in at the very early time, but you can get on the wait list and I will shoot you an email as soon as it drops. And I'm just really, really excited. But
It's
I would love to
outstanding.
connect with you on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on TikTok too. You can find me anywhere with socially.awesome. I've got the handle. So
And just
I
say that one more time. Socially
socially.awesome.
dot awesome.
AUSOME. Yep. And
Perfect.
yeah, or Google my name. You'll find me. I'm
And
everywhere.
and of course, all of this will be in
Yes,
the
of
show
course.
notes, and they can be able to click on it right there, and we'll get this done. So, well, first of all, I know you just dropped in here. I mean, you climbed off the airplane and got in front of a mic, and my goodness gracious, I'm so grateful for it. And even more grateful that you just really put out some great ideas and information that I think is going to be helpful to many, many
Thank
of us. Alyece Smith, thank you so much for
you.
being on Grow Yourself.
Yes, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.